Good morning and welcome to the Good Leadership Breakfast. I know we still have a few people getting through the food line and getting settled. So what I'm going to ask you to do before we get started here is get your phones out. We're actually going to let you use your phones today. We're going to have a few polling questions. So we're going to start off with the practice question so you can get it set up. You can scan the QR code or you can enter the website. But the questions are going to be, what are you most likely to do this Memorial Weekend? So I'll give you a couple minutes to get settled and do the first poll, and then we'll get started. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for completing the first poll question. It looks like we have a clear winner here this morning. A lot of people planning to just relax at home. Maybe a little bit of friends and family. I thought maybe the Timberwolves would be on here. Anybody gonna watch the Timberwolves? Oh, I know. Good morning. Welcome to the 109th Good Leadership Breakfast. This is the final breakfast of the spring series, celebrating the magic of managers. Excited to be here today. My name is Julie McDonough. I am with Old National Bank, and we are the presenting sponsor of the Good Leadership Breakfast. The Good Leadership Breakfast is a dynamic force of good leaders who come here together because they're committed to improving the way their organizations perform, because they know goodness pays. How many people are here for the first time this morning? Right. Welcome. We're happy to have you here. The spring series was celebrating the magic of managers, and if you've been to the other breakfasts, one of the things that struck me was, despite the totally different speakers, the different industries, or different points in their career, but the themes that come through are so similar, and especially when we think about the themes that we hear from their employees and what makes them special and what makes them good leaders. And that's why we're all here, to learn from that and to get a little bit better every day at what we do and take that back to the office. As I mentioned, I'm Julie McDonough. I'm the Minnesota Market President for Old National Bank here in Minnesota. And with that, I'd like to show a little quick video for you.
Gotta say, having an Old National commercial banker makes all the difference.
He anticipates what we need when we need it, like this warehouse expansion loan.
And the equipment leasing for our production line. It's almost like John loves the gourmet pasta business more than we do.
La nuova attrezzatura ha reso il processo molto più efficiente.
I didn't know John spoke Italian.
He does now.
Commercial bankers who love your business almost as much as you do. Another reason to get old.
Okay, well, hopefully if you take anything away from that, it's that we have a culture of we like to have a little bit of fun in addition to doing great work for our clients and our communities. With that, it's time for me to introduce the creator of the Good Leadership Breakfast. He's an informed optimist, a contrarian who pushes back against the bad news bias in the media, and a thought leader on organizational effectiveness. Please join me in welcoming to the stage a role model for how goodness pays, founder and CEO of Good Leadership, Paul Batz.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you. I always love it when May comes around because I get to wear this jacket. We need to call something out. If you're a Timberwolves fan, we got them right where we want them. That's exactly right, the Howls. We need more of those. It's really, really fun to be here, and I want to start with something I started two months ago that I got a lot of really good feedback on, and that's just to talk about what's new. I'm going to pass over this. So I've been talking about how Melinda and I have been living in the wintertime down in Arizona. We came back from Arizona in early April, and then we went to Europe for about 2 weeks with a bunch of friends. I'm really embracing sort of the go-go years, if you know what that means. You know, we've got the health and the time and the energy and the money to go expand our worldview. This is a picture of Melinda and me at the Brandenburg Gates in Berlin. What's cool about this picture, it was just taken on 4/12. So there was 420. There was a huge pot rally happening behind this. And when I say huge, imagine a marijuana celebration in Berlin. Huge. Yeah, that was amazing. The highlight of the trip this time was these photos were taken in Prague. Our hotel was right next to the US Embassy, like literally next door. And we were there on the 79th anniversary of the end of World War II. We had no idea. We walked outside and we saw this big parade of military vehicles and the Czech National Band was seated right there. You can see it. And we spent 2 hours watching this amazing ceremony. And it was especially pointed in the fact that that's the part of the world where Ukraine is. And so the conversation about why, we need to be allied, why we need to believe in peace and freedom and stuff, it was one of those kind of spine-tingling things that we had no idea was coming. So that's just another example of just how to embrace the joy of living. And when we came back, we got to welcome our new business development director, Jill. She's standing back here. I want everybody to give it up for Jill. You're going to hear me mention her name a couple of times when we start talking about our conference, but what this represents for me is I've been in professional services my whole career. And for the last 28 years of my career, I have been in charge of the top line growth. And now with Jill here, it's the first employee I've ever had in any of those businesses that's 100% focused on help us grow in our mission. It feels awesome, feels like the next level for us. And it's going to represent a whole bunch of new things here in this room as well. So I'm really grateful, and I'll mention Jill again later. And then the third thing is I'm happy to announce we're rounding second base now on this accountability research project. Those of you who have been hanging around the hoop, you know that we started talking about this about a year ago. The research is really building on itself. We are still in the process of recruiting partners, and so this is the last time I'll be able to say this. This summer, we need to complete interviews and surveys inside 60 companies. We have about another dozen spots. If your organization has 100 employees or more, 3 layers of management, it costs you no money. We don't need money at this stage. What we need is access. People who are willing to let us interview 3 people and then have 60 people do a survey that'll come in about the September timeframe. And then we will unveil the secrets for that in November on the 22nd. We're going to have a conference in this room, which we will talk about here in a minute. We're just grateful that you're here. For those of you who are new, this is a leadership development event. We believe by developing you as leaders that you can improve the effectiveness of your organization. This is how we do it. We're using polling. You all did a silly poll about this weekend. It was kind of fun to see a lot of people going to be hanging out at home. We're going to ask you a few more questions. We've got a workshop around one of the tools that we use, particularly in helping managers be more successful. Then I'm going to introduce you to our signature tool, the 7F's wheel, before I introduce our speaker, Kristine. We will raise some money through a technique we call the bucket of goodwill. And then I'm going to send you home with an idea about how you can help us with the conference. So with that, I want to remind you that we are celebrating the magic of managers, particularly the role managers have in creating what we call healthy accountability. We always buy data ahead of time to ground us in what we're talking about, and this is some data that we bought earlier. So the idea here is we ask managers, to what extent are managers in your organization equipped with the tools they need to be an effective manager? So 29% say fully equipped. But if you add the other 2 up, that's a big number. 71% say they're not fully equipped to do what we're asking them to do. And so we've been using the last 6 meetings to research what are the simplest things that managers feel like they need, what are some of the success habits, how do we make it simple, and that's just what we do. So our conversation with Kristine today is going to help us get there. And we also have another poll here to get us started and get us in the right mood. So if you haven't done this yet, take a picture use your camera for that QR code, and then when the little yellow bubble comes up, click it, and we are going to have you answer this question. Yeah, the question is, how much support do managers in your organization feel they have from senior leadership? So I'm going to now pass it back to my friend Julie here, who'll make sure we keep moving.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Paul mentioned one of our favorite exercises, the bucket of goodwill. But before we do that, I'd like to invite to the stage Ryan Evers from Robert Half. So So Ryan, please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you sponsor.
Yeah, thanks so much. So my name is Ryan Evers. I'm a regional director with Robert Half, and we're very happy to be here today as one of the sponsors for the event. For those of you that don't know, Robert Half has been around since 1948, and we are the world's first and largest business consulting and talent solutions firm. So we deliver our services through practice groups, and we support businesses in a variety of verticals: accounting and finance, technology, marketing and creative, legal and administrative, and customer support. And we also have an executive search practice that we work with a variety of companies throughout the Twin Cities for retained C-level search. But Robert Half has been a sponsor of the Good Leadership Breakfast for a number of years. It provides a platform for us to exchange valuable insights into our local community, and it allows us the opportunity to learn from other business leaders throughout the Twin Cities. And it's a great opportunity for us to just network and learn so much and become better leaders. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Robert Half is one of our longest tenured sponsors here at the breakfast, so we are very grateful for that and grateful for all of the sponsorship support that lets us do this. Okay, now this is one of our favorite traditions here. If you see this at your local hardware store, it's called the Handy Paint Pail. Here at Good Leadership, we call it the bucket of goodwill. So here's how this works. I'm going to ask you to practice your generosity and your aspirational thinking this morning. Your generosity means you put some cash in here, or you scan the QR code to donate, or as Paul likes to say, we take IOUs, we know where to find all of you because you registered today. And, think for a minute about how lucky we are to be here this morning. This beautiful spring day, a beautiful club, wonderful breakfast, and dig deep. But here's the fun part. Put your business card into, and we will match the dollars. And at the end of the breakfast, our speaker, Kristine, will draw somebody's card out of here. You will come up on stage, and you'll get to donate all of the money in this bucket to the charity of your choice. And what's really cool is over the years of the Good Leadership Breakfast, we have donated to almost 100 different organizations, over $430,000. And that's all of you. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that. While you're doing that, share with the people at your table what your charity of choice would be if you get selected at the end. Okay, thank you so much for that exercise, and I look forward at the end to drawing one of your names to come up. One of the things that sets Good Leadership apart is how we use data to support our beliefs that goodness pays. And with that, I'd like to introduce the president of Good Leadership, Kevin Sensenig.
All right, thanks, Julie. Appreciate it. Well, thank you, Julie. Great to be back on stage with you again, and great to be here for everyone with the Good Leadership Breakfast. Our theme this spring has been celebrating the magic of managers, and managers truly are that magic that makes organizations work. They're right at the center of all those heavy parts of policies and procedures and people issues, of processes and systems and structures that allow us to be successful, to be productive and profitable as organizations. But unfortunately for managers, often their hard work, their effort, their focus goes unrecognized and sometimes underappreciated until something goes wrong, right? And then the spotlight comes on. Everyone's like, why didn't that team perform? And why didn't that person do this? And why didn't that system work? And why didn't this go out to a customer on time? And so we have to recognize that managers are carrying a lot of that weight of balancing many different things in their life and in their day throughout the organization. And so even knowing that the managers are faced with all those challenges, we still as organizations often make the mistake of assuming that our best performer will most naturally be our best managers. So we promote them forward, and they get into that role, and they're wondering, how am I going to do this? Do I have the support I need? Do I have the training I need? And we're assuming because they're so good, they'll just figure it out. And so some things we have to think about today as we talk about supporting our managers more effectively is how do we make sure they feel that support from senior leadership and the training they need to be most successful. So when Paul was here on stage a minute ago, he asked that poll question about, to what extent do managers feel supported from senior leadership? So I want to take a moment and thank Ambivista, our research partner. They help us collect the outside data before we come into the breakfast. They do a great job of that. And When they surveyed managers, what they found was, again, only about 24% of managers feel they are fully supported by senior leadership. That means over 75% are saying, I don't feel fully supported by senior leadership in my role. In the room, when you did the poll, I was watching the polls that came up there, we weren't a whole lot better, unfortunately, because only 27% of us said that we were, fully supported, 27%. So again, we're a little better, which is good. We focus on goodness, that's a great thing. But still, lots of room for improvement for us to get better at senior leaders of supporting our managers. So the second thing we should look at is this idea of how do we begin to provide the best training for our managers? So if you pull out your phone again and take our next poll, to what extent do managers in your organization believe they have the training they need to be effective as a manager? Let's see if we're providing the training that they need in that regard. So let's look at our outside data. What did managers outside of the room say? Well, only about 30% of the managers we interviewed or surveyed prior to the breakfast said they felt they were fully trained to do their role, to be effective as being a manager. So let's take a look at what does that look like inside the room? What do we say? Okay, so again, only about 21% here feel we're adequately trained to do our job as managers. So again, we have a lot of room for improvement, not only providing support, but also providing that training as we go along. So let's think about that a little bit, kind of build into some ideas that we can take away from today to use to get better in working and getting that magic out of our managers. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to pull out the tool, my Leadership Stability tool. It's in your handout today if you want to pull that out a while. What we're recognizing as we work with managers in a lot of different organizations, as I mentioned, they're dealing with a lot of pressures and ideas and thoughts and things to keep moving. And what happens often for managers we talk to is they indicate they lose a sense of focus. They lose that ability to stay focused on the things they can control, and they get distracted a lot by the things that they can't control. Things that begin to overwhelm them, and they really can't control that, but that becomes a major part of their thinking and their effort and their heavy lift. And that makes it even more challenging for them to stay focused on the things that they really need to drive effectively in the organization. And so we have to start thinking a little bit about how do we help individuals not only focus on the things that they can control, but also be willing to seek the support and accept the support from others, particularly senior leaders, who can help them overcome some of those things that they can't control in that process. And so this tool is fairly straightforward. It helps us to think a little bit about what can we control for ourselves. So think about if you're a manager, kind of first person, what can I control in my environment, myself and my team? What can I control within myself and my team? And then outside of myself, for others in the organization, outside maybe customers or markets, what can I control? What can I control in that? Because when I can, again, stay focused on some of those things that I can control, now I can begin to get the best results. I can find ways to work through those, and I can get the support for the things I need on the can't control side of the model. You know, we're on this holiday weekend. You're all going to have a chance to spend some time with friends, and inevitably, I think you'll probably hear some different perspectives on this weekend. Senior leaders are going to be saying it's a great time to relax and recover and refresh and get ready for next week. You know, employees are probably thinking about all the things their manager didn't do for them this week and kind of probably complain about that a little bit. Managers are struggling all weekend. Oh, man, next week I got all these things on my list to do. And so they're going to come back into next week a little bit distracted and feeling like there's all these pressures to catch up from the long weekend. So today I'm going to ask you to spend a few minutes thinking about this. If you're a direct manager, again, think about this personally. If you're supporting a manager, whether you're a senior leader or on a team, think about what can I do to help my managers be more focused on what they can control and seek support for what they can't control. And then once you had a chance to kind of think through those a little bit, I'm going to ask you to talk about this with one or two people at your table. Two key things. First, discuss the stability tool a little bit. What do you see in the model? It's helping you frame this thought of how we help managers bring that magic to our organization. Think a little bit about, how does it help us build that manager consistency, that employees feel a consistency of how managers are working together and working with teams in the organization. And then secondly, identify some situations where next week you can start talking to managers about how they can control certain things more effectively and find the support they need for the things that they can't control. All right, well, as we said earlier, lots of good energy in the room, good discussion, hard to pull back in. But as I walked around, I heard some really good comments and thoughts about how people are thinking about this idea of what managers can control and can't control. And so JC's been out in the audience as well. So JC, what are some things you were hearing and sensing as you were in the audience this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was chatting with Scott down in the middle of the pit here, and Scott, started by going, I'm a solopreneur. So outside of the manager conversation, but also how often are we, sitting in the lone seat and still we're managing relationships. We're always in that seat of going, Where are we? How are we in the midst of relationships and what we can and what we can't control? And the great thing I love about this tool is it forces us to go, what do we influence and what do we not influence? And we get stuck. Once we understand where we are controlling, where we are not controlling, whatever those things are, then we can start moving. So, Scott in the wilderness by himself going, hey, here are the influences, the big, the small, the macro, the micro. Now I can go ahead and start moving. So no matter where you are, no matter how many people on your team, no matter who's above, who's below within that sphere, it was great. And then, Kevin, you mentioned, maybe what Bo was saying, within a team structure.
I'm going to slide over to him real quickly there. So Bo was talking a little bit about the idea of using this from a performance review process, right? Chance to help people focus on what can you control as you get better and what can't you control in that process. So a good way to think about that. One of the other things I heard as I kind of walked around was a couple of tables talked about, sometimes fear creeps in to our thinking as managers. I'm fearful of what will people think of this and am I showing up in this? And so sometimes we can assume as a can't control item, but we can begin to put some things in place to control that fear so we can move forward. So again, some thoughts and ideas for us as we go out and think about, are we supporting our managers so they can be at their best? Are we training them? We'll talk about that a little bit more this morning. How we prepare them to be effective as managers as they go forward. So thanks for participating in that. Good opportunity to start thinking this weekend about when I go back to work next Tuesday and I begin to really get back into it. Because I know tomorrow, you're getting ready for the weekend tomorrow. But Tuesday we get back with everyone and now you're ready to go again. How do I take control of things I can control and get support for things I can't control? And help them managers focus on what they can control and take the support for what they can't control. So with that, I'm going to bring Paul back to the stage. He's going to take us through some conversation around our 7F Insight tool and get us back on track in that piece as we move towards Kristine this morning. So thanks for participating in our workshop.
Thank you, Kevin. So if you've been here before, this is familiar to you. It's called the 7F's wheel. This concept was developed by 4 other friends of mine. We had an accountability group. We called ourselves the Personal Accountability Group, and our mission was to make sure that we were helping each other thrive both personally and professionally. We invested in each other's lives when we started asking each other, how are you doing on 7 things? Those 7 things alphabetically are faith, family, finances, fitness, friends, fun, and future. We established a 1 through 10 scale. Somebody in the group opened up a laptop and started keeping track of our scores and would send us an email on anything that we had that was 7 or below. He called it the red report. Yep. So here's the deal. This is how this works. And I want you to put you into the mindset we just talked about with Kevin. If managers don't feel like they're fully equipped to make the kind of connections with people, to create the spirit of accountability and belonging, this is a marvelous tool. This is not frosting, this is cake. So I'm going to walk you through it, and I'm going to ask you to do the assessment. Each one of these spokes has a 1 through 10 on it. 10 means it couldn't be any better right now. 1 means it couldn't be any worse, right? So faith is all about your spiritual life. How satisfied are you right now with your spiritual life? Please do the exercise. Circle 1 through 10. Family. Sometimes it's a small concept, sometimes it's a big concept. You can decide whatever that means to you. We're talking about how satisfied are you with your loved ones who share a common sense of home, 1 through 10. Finances. This is not about how much money you have in your portfolio or your pocket at the moment. It's about how satisfied are you with how your money funds your priorities. Fitness. This means something different to me now that I'm over 60. How satisfied are you with the health of your body? 1 through 10. Friends. How satisfied are you with the people who share your joys and disappointments? Fun. How satisfied are you with the part of your life that's playful and joyful? And future, the last one of the 7 F's. How satisfied are you with the hope that you have for yourself and others? I'm going to ask you in just a second to talk to the person next to you for 3 minutes about how does this change how you think about accountability? in the context of being a manager, even if you're just a manager of you. So you do this by connecting the dots. That creates the shape on your 7S wheel, and the Smart Aleck coaching question is, will your 7S wheel roll? In just a few minutes, I'm going to be asking Kristine how the 7Fs are alive in her work as a manager and a leader. What I want to remind you is we're focusing all these concepts on the magic of managers, and what we know to be true is that when management or managers are inconsistent, it causes a constant inflammation in the culture. And so, we understand that we might be part of this problem because our firm is called Good Leadership. And we've been living in a period of about 30 years where almost all the literature that you all have been reading is about leadership. Management is kind of a forgotten concept. It's starting to come back. We started to rediscover how important managers were as glue during COVID. And now, as we're watching organizations that are really intent on becoming more effective, we're hearing the word consistency like we've never heard before. We used to hear innovation, we're hearing all sorts of other things, but consistency is the most important word right now. And when we say that word, they associate it with the people who manage the people. So as I introduce you to our speaker today, I just wanted you to listen to how she thinks about this concept. It's really exciting for me to introduce you to somebody that I met several years ago, and it was 5 or 6 years ago, and Aaron Wilkin and I, our Chief Operating Officer, we always knew we would invite Chris to be a speaker today. So we're really kind of coming full circle on that. So our speaker today, professionally, she wanted to be a professor like her father, but then she got a PhD and went into research instead, and that's obviously serving this job really well. She's got experience both in for-profit and nonprofit leadership. What I think is hilarious is she grew up here in the Twin Cities. She was one of 3 daughters, and now she's the mom of 3 boys. And I have a feeling she's going to talk about that a little bit. And they love being an outdoor family. They like to go into their cabin, hiking and yoga and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to introduce you to Kristine Fortman, who's the CEO of the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation. Please join me in welcoming Kristine. So, when you hear me say the words celebrating the magic of managers, what comes to mind for you?
Oh gosh. Well, I see managers as the backbone of any organization. And I believe, and I talk about culture a lot, and they are the creators and keepers of the culture. And that is a really important job and can be overwhelming, right?
So keepers of the culture, how do they do that? What do you expect that they do?
Yeah, everybody's like, oh my gosh. But communicating, right? It makes or breaks everything. And we're always working on it, right? So how do you make sure that we're all singing off the same sheet of music? And how are we cascading information? And a lot of that weight falls on our managers, right? And to get it right, we don't want a game of telephone, right? Because what you get at the end is usually nothing like you started with.
Right, yeah.
And so I think having managers be willing and able to ask questions to make sure that they are sharing the message, that they do have the priorities down and that they believe in it, right? Because a message that you don't believe in is not a valuable message.
So let's back up a little bit. Will you tell us about the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation? What do you do? Where do you fit in the ecosystem of the healthcare?
All right, let's hear it for the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation. I have my people here, right? Okay, I couldn't help myself. So,
well, you are the first person at the table that I've done this 109 times. It's asked people if their hearts were healthy at the table.
I know.
I'm just saying, right?
Yeah. I saw some bacon. A lot of bacon was going on, but I got you, right? So the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation is an independent 501c3. It's a nonprofit organization that has been around for 42 years, and it does cardiovascular research and education. So our vision is a world without heart and vascular disease, and we do that through innovative research and education. So at any one time, 200 active studies, over 2,000 patients engaged in those research projects, over 11,000 education hours. So we have a team of about 100 folks, and we support over 100 cardiologists and surgeons in making sure that this research moves forward, that gets new therapies into care and answers questions so we can all live a healthier life.
We're glad you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So did you imagine you'd be doing this job when you were like in high school? I kind of doubt it, right?
Oh gosh, no.
Yeah, so would you tell us how did you grow up?
Oh, so I grew up in Roseville, yeah. And I went to, so just an emotional story, I went to Kellogg High School, and it combined with Ramsey High School, if anybody knows this. And as a senior in high school, when all of a sudden your high school goes away and becomes Roseville High School, I'm still recovering from it. So that was the big drama when I was 17. But I'm really lucky to grow up with my two sisters and my parents in Roseville. You know, I feel like I grew up on the University of Minnesota campus. My dad was a professor of medical microbiology, and he would bring us to the lab. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And we were lucky to have, we had a microscope in our basement, and my dad would put spiders in alcohol, and we'd look at it. And so we were raised to be curious. We had a cabin in Wisconsin, and when people think about cabins, they're like, oh, you were on the lake, you were boating, you were doing this. It was in the middle of the woods with an outhouse and a pump. And one of my dad's claim to fame is that he patented the Lyme disease vaccine, right? So we would go around, and I can tell you all about a deer tick and a wood tick and what they look at, the nymph stage and all of this, but that's what we did. We collected ticks. In fact, our family dog, yeah, you want to hang out with me, right? Our family dog's name was Charlie, and one of the ticks we took off our dog was used in that research, and our dog's name Charlie is in a really important article in Nature magazine or Nature, journal. So anyhow. That's
way more than I was hoping for.
Right? Sorry.
Oh, I love it. So eventually you decided to get a PhD. And so I want to ask you about your pivot points. Yeah. Every leader that's ever come up here has been able to look back on their careers and say, that happened, it took me in a different direction, and that was a good thing. So what are some of the pivot points that got you to where you're at now?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that I grew up on the University of Minnesota campus, right? So obviously, I applied there to go to school. And at the last minute, I toured the College of St. Benedict's. And I'm like, I'm going there, right? I met these nuns, and they knocked my socks off. I'm like, you are hardcore, and I could learn a lot from you. So really, at the last minute, and I still feel like I have to apologize to Carolyn, who was supposed to be my roommate at the University of Minnesota, because I ducked out at the last minute, and I still feel bad about that. But going to St. Ben's was life-changing for me, and so different from what I ever had in my mind. And I kind of joke about the nuns, but the sisters who educated me and supported me, I mean, to this day, I think about them. And isn't that weird? I don't mean to get emotional about that, but yeah.
That's fantastic. We believe in colleges around here, especially small colleges, so that was awesome. Yeah.
So being at St. Ben's and seeing those strong women who cared about other women, definitely that pivot point from the you to there, that was one. And then, as you mentioned, I was always going to be a professor. I saw how much my dad loved what he did and the impact he had, and I'm like, I want to do that. And my first job out of graduate school was at Health Partners Research Foundation. And
they're in the room right there.
All right, in the room. I still get care at Health Partners. All of my kids went there, and we had the same pediatrician for all of my children until they were the age 18. How cool is that?
Yeah.
I love that. And then a fun fact is when I got into research at Health Partners, I was actually doing research with two gentlemen who ended up being the pediatricians that we saw. So anyways, and I just have to say what it was. It was like how to have painless circumcision. Should I just keep talking about weird things? You have ticks and circumcision right now, but you've got to do research on that as well.
Are you having any fun out there?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was able to do research across all areas of healthcare, and the power, the importance, the impact, the change that research made, I was hooked. And to realize that research really does happen outside of the academic institution, I decided I'm staying. So that was one, and can I tell you one more?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you, how'd you become a highfalutin executive?
Yeah, everybody's like, she's not, right? But so at Health Partners, we wrote grants to do the research, and it was soft money, and that's pretty stressful to always be looking for those dollars. And a friend of mine left and went to Medtronic and said, you can do research for free there. And I'm like, yes, I'm in. I can just oversee a portfolio of research. So I went and I joined the cardiac rhythm disease management area and really participated and oversaw clinical research in cardiac care for 2 years. And then pivoting from there to the foundation, I think is what really set me up for this current role. I had all this great research experience. I had the opportunity to go to the Medtronic Foundation, which was switching its focus to increasing access to chronic disease care for the underserved. Okay. And it was such a beautiful intersection of how do we leverage research, how do we improve care, and how do we fund that with philanthropy to be a real game changer. So those are those big moments in my path.
So who saw the promise in you as an executive leader?
So it's so funny because the person who hired me at Medtronic, her name is Julie Pfeiffer, and she was a clinical research manager and one of the most fun, caring people I ever met. And the day she hired me, she goes, someday you're gonna be my boss. And I just laughed at that. And then she would just say that. And then I started to believe it. I was never actually her boss, but I did move into roles that I leveraged that. And the same thing happened at Health Partners. Sherry Rolnick was my boss, and then I joke because then she went on my board at MHIF, and I'm like, oh, you're my boss again.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And she believed in me. And sometimes you have to get the hard messages to know what your next step should be. And I worked on a manuscript back at Health Partners that I really thought was right on, right? It was cancer research. And she had critiqued it and gave it back to me. And she honestly said, you are not gonna burden the world down with your science. And I'm like, okay, thanks. And she said, but you have the healthiest team here, and you need to focus on how you can appreciate science and move people forward. And that sticks with me to this day.
That was a pivot point.
Yes,
absolutely.
Indeed. Yeah.
It's very exciting. I think it's awesome. And so you have both this for-profit and nonprofit experiences. How are those coming together right now?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it is how to utilize resources in the best way, right? And I think sometimes we have this sense that nonprofits, are at a deficit all of the time. And I think it's so important, nonprofits are businesses. They provide a really important service. We were talking about the Epilepsy Foundation, right? I see folks from the Red Cross that I serve on the board with, and obviously the MHIF team. And we are providing something, right, that has value. And so it's using that same mindset. Now, I will say there's pros and cons to both sides,
Yep.
right? And one of the things that we really enjoy leveraging at the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation, because we're about 100 folks, right, is we can make decisions pretty quickly.
Yep.
I know we'd like to do it quicker. I maybe saw an eye roll from my team over here. But if you compare that to Medtronic, where you went through so many layers to make a decision, we really feel that we're agile and we can get things done, and we do.
It's interesting, Bill George was the speaker at our 100th breakfast, and he sat here saying he couldn't work in the Medtronic of today because it was too big and too slow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really fascinating, making that connection. So healthcare is amazingly dynamic. About 40% of what we do at Good Leadership has something to do with healthcare, and it just seems really confused. There's a lot going on, and so we're talking about managers here. So can you explain a couple of the big shifts you're navigating, and then what are you expecting your managers to do to keep you guys healthy?
Yeah. So, well, one of the biggest shifts is how we practice now post-pandemic, right? I mean, so much changed for everybody, and we're really a place-based organization where people need to come in to work, right? It wasn't, I didn't have team members who are like zooming in from Mountain Lodge in Colorado, because that did happen. I was like, hey, wait, where are you? I want to be there. So we were a people who went out at the pandemic and then came right back in. And some like really early doing, emergency clinical trials. I'm looking at one of my folks, Lisa here, who had a blow up mattress in her office just to be able to be there and support the work. So, it was a change of a flip for us to kind of come back and be able to do the work. We made changes so quickly where for a short time you could get things approved quickly. We really moved to, we sound so old fashioned, but e-signature, because we were like paper heavy in so many ways, and we were required to hang on to certain documents. So how we could leverage technology really changed how we could do our work. So that's like the plus point. The really hard shift that we've seen, and everybody sees it, our current healthcare model is broken. We do not make money, right? We're rewarded for the wrong things to have a healthy business. And so as healthcare tries to recover from the pandemic and maybe have a different model going forward, our physician partners, our various practitioners are just being squeezed. There wasn't time before. Now there's less time. And my team depends on having time with the physicians and the patients in order to have them understand research and enter that. So that's been a really hard barrier for our managers and their teams, and we're working really hard on what is the solution. And I guess what I expect from my team members is just that solution orientation, right? Not to just be so upset. One of the most important things we can do, and I believe this more than ever after the pandemic, is you just need to show up. Sometimes you might have no gas in your tank. You can control that. Show up.
Yeah, and we tend to get the most upset about the things we can't control, and so that's one of the reasons why we brought that tool out here today.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite parts about getting to know the leaders that come and speak here is the success habit research we do. So in the interview process, to get prepared for this, we ask the speaker to provide us with some names. Some people from the Good Leadership team call, and we ask a bunch of questions that help us figure out, what are your success habits? And the way we think about a success habit is this. What are the things that you've observed about somebody that they do over and over and over again that you think really works? That's what a success habit is. And so we got 3 for you. And so one of the success habits that your observers said is that you honor differing and unique talents. So the question is, why do you think that's important? I think that's pretty obvious. But then also, how do you do it? How can we get better at this?
Well, so I love people to a fault. Like sometimes people will avoid me because they're like, oh, she's gonna hug me, she's gonna ask me all these questions, and I really need to get stuff done.
Should
right?
look for ticks.
Yeah, I might. Tick check. So okay, now I just got off.
That was my bad.
Yeah. So my PhD is an interdisciplinary PhD, and that just shows that I believe you need all these different perspectives to come together to really be innovative and move things forward. And I can't even imagine the strength we have in this room. For all the different perspectives. So I respect that, and I try to learn from everyone I meet, and I know that they can help with where we need to go.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. So the second one we learned, let's see if I can get this to advance. People say you're good at matching leadership styles to situations. So tell us about that, and then how do you do it?
So I'm editing out some happy hour stories that I'm not going to tell now, with my team and others. So, I mean, I think that's just part of who we are. We're a different person sometimes and team when we're reporting out to our board of directors versus trying to problem solve in a small team, or we're interviewing a new candidate, right? We want people to come to MHIF, right? So we put on our best hats. And so I think that I try to do that, whether I'm with donors or physicians or my team members. And it's not that I'm not being authentic, but I think they come to the table with a different priority or need. And I want us to be able to meet that and for people to be heard. And in order to do that, you make those shifts, right? And I think that just shows that you care and that person or that group really matters.
Yeah, it is a gift to learn how to match yourself to the situation. And it's easier for some than it is for others. So we have a third one, and I just get a kick out of this. It's encouraging questions. So I'm asking you a question about how do you encourage questions? Yep. So how do you encourage questions?
Yeah, well, I mean, I just flat out ask people to ask questions, right? I mean, sometimes, and it shouldn't be. I'm always like, the CEO title, to me, doesn't mean, I mean, I respect that role in the organization, but I don't think I should change a room or a conversation at a table or a wellness walk. We do that at MHIF. And sometimes I'm told, well, you kind of do, right? And so it's like, how do you break that down a little, and how do you ask questions to kind of break down barriers? And it's so funny because the thing that I say a lot, I was thinking was a question, and it's not, but it's like, tell me more, right? That's the go-to on everything. Well, how you say it is, okay, tell me more, right? And that just gets it going. And, I'll do this with my team members. I also do it with my family because it's just a nice starting place if people aren't ready to share. And I'm like, and you'll like this because you like data. On a 10-point scale, Paul, right? How's this going?
At the moment?
Yeah. Right, I'm putting them on
We're
the
giving
spot.
this a 10, baby.
Yeah. But then I'd say, well, what makes it a 7? What makes it a 4? What makes it? And it's just those steps to kind of get there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fantastic bridge over to the conversation about the 7F's Insight tool. Only one, this is the 109th breakfast. And only once at about number 30-something did I decide not to do the 7F's wheel. And I had never heard from so many of you before as I didn't. So I'm going to ask you, when you were doing the 7F's wheel today, how was your 7F's wheel? And then how are you thinking about how this might actually work back at the foundation?
Yeah, well, I love it. I think that we really try and encourage everybody to always bring their whole selves to work. I think this is absolutely wellness, right? And we all know that we do better work at work and at home if we are well. So paying attention to that is critical. So I've done something like this, but it had like different like professional or different pieces in there. I like kind of the emotional, personal side of this a lot, because that gives us that permission to bring that to the table. My team knows we've been doing a little more of these exercises because we've changed as a team. We've had some people retire, we've had new team members come on, and so it's such a great tool to break down and understand who we are as a whole person. Personally, I love it. I was kind of thinking, and now I'm aging myself again, about like the Flintstones and Fred Flintstone and the stone wheels, right? So it's a little lumpy, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
But it's nice to know where you could do it. So I see this as a great exercise to bring back to the teams at MHIF and have that dialogue. Yeah.
Well, we gave you all a paper copy if you want a PDF, or it's downloadable on our website, and we would encourage you to use it, especially now that we've really been diving into how important managers are to the effectiveness of organizations. Great tool for that. So I want to ask you the question that we have been asking consistently now for 10 years. And that question is, how do you know for sure that goodness pays for you and your leadership?
Okay, so I love that question, and I'm fortunate to have a few examples, but I'm just going to use one, and I'm going to start it in a strange way to say, I saw this post on Instagram. Are you guys worried about where this is going? And what it said was, cursive is a superpower, right? And I don't know about you who have children, right? But they don't teach cursive
No, they don't
anymore,
teach it anymore. No.
Right? And so that's like with my 3 boys, I write everything in cursive to them. I'm like, you are going to learn how to read this. And so what that leads to is, it is so meaningful to me, and I consider it a true treasure when I get a handwritten note.
Yeah.
Right? And I am so fortunate that, whether it's a past intern that we've had at the foundation, or an employee, or a patient that we took time with, or somebody I worked with like 2 careers ago who said, hey, I thought about you today when I had to make this decision. And they take the time to pick up a pen, figure out where you buy those things called stamps,
Yeah,
right?
that's right, yeah.
And send it to you. And so, not to freak you out or make you think I'm stranger than you probably think I already am, but I save all of those, right? I have those notes, and they are treasures, and I think they show how goodness pays off.
I completely agree. Well, we think very carefully about how we put these speakers together in sequence. We always want to end strong. This is what ending strong feels like. So thank you very much, Kristine. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Now, you're not done yet.
I'm not.
Oh, no. First we have some money for you, then you get to help us give away money. So I've got Julie coming back up here.
All right. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Kristine. And for being here today, we have $1,000 to donate to the charity of your choice.
I wonder what that is.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, and in our bucket of goodwill today, we have $2,415.
That's amazing.
Right? And with the generous match from our friends at Handy Paint Pail, $4,830 will go
Amazing.
to
Thank
the
you.
charity.
Thank you, Mark.
Will you draw a card, please?
Yes. Okay, this is in cursive. Honestly, it is. It's like written. Crystal Miller?
Miller.
Crystal Miller.
Crystal Miller, get up there. I can see her. Where is she?
Come on
There
up.
she is. Come on up. Yeah, fantastic.
Do I give that to you? Okay.
So Crystal's going to come and tell us where she's going to donate.
All right, Crystal, we got a microphone for you.
Yeah,
right
there
over
you
here.
go. Go ahead.
So Crystal, tell us where you work and
I'm with Health Source Solutions.
okay.
Can I split it?
Sure.
Sure.
So in memory of my mom, I'd like to do the Alzheimer's Association. And then in memory of my dad, I'd like to do the American Heart Association.
That's
Wonderful.
amazing. Thank you very, very
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Wow, what fun, huh? Yeah, it's amazing. We really take your interest and your engagement seriously. You help us understand, what topics and what kinds of people, and for the most part, these speakers come to us by recommendations from you. So you know how to get me. It's paul@goodleadership.com. We're always interested in what you're thinking about, who you think might be a good speaker. A year ago, we started doing research on how people thought about accountability in their organizations. And we decided it was time to start talking about managers and realizing that we could be part of the problem. We're good leadership, and we're talking about managers. Managers are leaders, etc. We're not going to get into that semantics. But here's the data set that's motivating us and how we're thinking about product development and how we're thinking about coaching. We've done the research, and people are telling us when they're in organizations, they believe, 82% of people believe that the point of accountability is with one's direct people manager. You just saw today the supporting data from this room and what we bought, that only 71% of those managers feel adequately trained. And then we wonder why we have to start studying accountability. And nothing that we've done in the 15 years of good leadership has been as sticky and as interesting as this accountability research. It's really awesome. And what's been happening is there have been clients who've said, okay, we don't want to wait till November 22nd for the research. What can you do for us now? And so we've been thinking about the themes. And when it comes to manager consistency, there are 3 themes of things that make the biggest difference related to accountability. Number 1, a consistent team experience. A team manager who knows how to create an experience that's predictable, is focused on the right things. And then when I move from that team over to another team, if they're consistent, it brings out the best in me and I'm more likely to be accountable. So we've got materials here that teach this. The second one is managers need to be coaches today. That we don't have enough time thing. I think the Blanchard Company, they figured this out a long time ago with this concept called the 1-minute manager. Has that ever been more relevant than now? So that's the second one. And the third one is if people have a sense of where they're at in the organization, where they fit, why they matter, and maybe where am I headed, I'm much more likely to buy into the kinds of things you're asking me to do that I might not agree with or think are very easy. So these 3 topics are organized into some intellectual property called manager consistency. Summertime is an awesome time to do this kind of training. These are self-led playbooks. If you're at all interested in these things, Jill's back here. We can help you with this. This is a big part of our mission, is to take what we learn, convert it into things that are easy to use. Manager consistency. So where we're headed this fall, how lucky are we that the CEO of the Timberwolves said he wanted to speak here in September? I'm really hoping we're celebrating a world championship when he gets here. We got a little work to do, but yeah, I'm sure he'll tell us all about it. We have really enjoyed our relationship that we have with the Timberwolves and Lynx. It's a phenomenal business story that has very little to do with what's happening actually on the court. You're going to really enjoy meeting Ethan. And then Craig Warren. Craig is one of the more interesting people I've met in the last 5 years. He's a beautiful human being. He's intense and gentle. He is a military veteran who really thrived in the military leadership system, and then he invested in himself as a psychologist, and now he runs the Washburn Center for Children. He's an amazing dude. He was at a dinner that we had last night, and everybody who met him just really felt like they'd been touched by somebody special. We only have 2 breakfasts in the fall because we're building our momentum towards the Good Leadership Conference. This is not the first Good Leadership Conference we did. We did one 11 years ago, focused on research that we did called How Leaders Grow Today. The context then was the Great Recession, where nobody was spending any money on anyone. And so that first conference, it was held in South Minneapolis. It was very different than this conference, but We really hope that you're interested in joining us here. We're going to reveal the secrets from the data that we've collected. There'll be workshops and a toolkit. There'll be a CEO panel. And of course, it's good leadership. So live music and happy hour. So why are we doing a conference? I'm going to remind you, our mission here is to spread goodness. And we defined 9 years ago goodness as when people thrive together in a culture of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork. There is no accountability, there is no goodness without accountability. We think of that as the glue. And the clients that we've been working with the most, when we ask them, what are you struggling with? What do you wish could be better in the future? Almost ubiquitously, the answer has been, we got to get better at accountability. The flexible workforce now, all the things coming out of COVID, any number of different things cause us to really rethink this concept. So, how do you get in the room? The bad news is we're not going to sell any individual tickets. We think about this as a user group conference. These are people that have participated in the research. We're going to bring people that we're going to wrestle through how are we going to behave differently on Monday because we came to a conference on Friday. We have 16 tables remaining. The reason we're going to be here in this room, the reason we only have 16 tables remaining is because the companies who were part of the original founding of this research, the steering team, the sponsors, the people who put up the time, energy, and money, they've taken more than half of the room. So if you're at all interested in this, we need to talk to you about it soon. 8 people for the day is $10,000. 4 people, a half table, is $5,000, and it comes with all the intellectual property and all the toolkits. Jill is right back here. If you're interested, please talk to us because the list is already long. I'm anticipating that in September we'll say we're already full. So we really hope that you're motivated to be a part of this, and say one more thing about it. Why would you want to be a part of this? We think there's value in being on the front end of anything. We also believe that the peer-to-peer networking and workshopping is really valuable. It's gonna be fun. We've hired a really cool band with brass and an awesome singer that's gonna be down here and just keeping this room really exciting. We think we're starting a movement, and we think it's an awesome branding experience. If you've got employees you really want to invest in, this is an awesome way to do it. So enough about that. My point is this. I really think we have an opportunity to change the narrative about a concept we're learning a lot about. It's called accountability. Can you imagine what it would be like if together, we work together, and we could shift the dialogue from holding people accountable to helping people be accountable? If we could change the mindset of management from being reactive about accountability to proactive about accountability. And if we could take a concept that we're learning is largely punitive and negative, if we could change the dialogue around that to healthy, how would your organization perform worse? And I also think about this. We're all old enough to know that lots of things that are healthy for us are not actually simple or easy or even fun. But when you know something is healthy for you, it always feels good. We need to change that narrative. We need your help to do it. We think we're going to really get going in a big way in the fall. The theme for the Good Leadership Breakfast in the fall is building healthy accountability. We look forward to seeing you back in this room in September. We've got that wonderful slate of speakers. You're going to meet Ethan Casson, the CEO of the Timberwolves. That's really, really going to be fun. I want to say one more thank you. It was a wonderful way to cap off our series here this spring. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, one more time. And with that, I just want to send you home with the idea that we believe the highest compliment for any good leader is you radiate goodness. So are you ready to radiate goodness today? Thank you very much. We will see you in September.